How many of you have heard from a past or a present member something along these lines? I like Unitarian Universalism's tolerance and acceptance of all people. I just wish they wouldn't bring politics into the Sunday service. I just wish they left politics out of it. I get it. I really do. Politics can be a poison in a congregation. It can divide a congregation into factions. It can send the message that only those who affiliate with one political party is welcome. Unitarian Universalism is not the only religion guilty of this, so we are not unique in having partisan-leaning congregations. And contrary to some perceptions, Unitarian Universalism is not an arm of the Democratic Party, or the Libertarian Party, or the Democratic Socialist Party, or the Republican Party, or the Green Party, despite the conversations we hear during social hour. If we are living our faith and seeking to embody the principles of this faith, then our religious practice should transcend political party lines. Let me repeat that. If we are living our faith and seeking to embody the principles of this faith, then our religious practice should transcend political party lines. I say should, because so frequently we do not, and not having the ability to transcend political party lines harms fulfilling our desire to grow as a faith tradition. But here is the complex reality for Unitarian Universalists. Our faith is inherently political. We state as an association these words: we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. When we state that we have a goal of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, we are declaring ourselves to be political in our very aspiration of our faith. Have we thought what these words mean for us living here in Florida? As I read this goal, I wonder about how I might, through my faith, influence the Bradenton community to be expressions of peace, liberty, and justice for all. I don't want it to only be some lofty utopian word that sounds pretty, but everyone knows they are unattainable and unrealistic. Some could say the words have no true intention of anyone ever actually trying to embody these sentiments in our daily life. Many who call themselves adherents of a specific religious faith have no intention of matching their behavior to the professed religious creeds, values, or morals. So we could be like everyone else in that regard, but is that why we choose to be Unitarian Universalists? To be like everyone else outwardly, only garbed in a different cloth? Our very foundation of our faith declares that we will seek to create a world, a nation, a state, a county, a city, a neighborhood, a fellowship, where democracy is a means to create peace, liberty, and justice for all. We state this plainly. Democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. This is our denominational covenant, and as we as a congregation of this denomination signed on to, abide this covenant to the best of our abilities. So unlike other faiths, where the mission is to go and make disciples of all the world, ours is to go and create peace, liberty, and justice for all. Ours is a political faith by its very essence, and hopefully ours is also a faith grounded in sound moral and ethical principles. But we seek to do this work through the democratic process, and we do it by honoring the right of conscience. Nikki Haley, the United States Ambassador to the United Nations, made an interesting statement last year about what she was observing in African countries. She stated, "These African countries, and all countries, if they take care of their people, if they respect the voices of their people, then you get true democracy. If they don't listen to the voices of their people, conflict will erupt, extremism will happen. She is talking about accountability. Who are we accountable to when we use democratic process? We are accountable to the people. I doubt that Ambassador Haley realized the irony of her words in making this statement to the world when our own nation is increasingly deaf to its people, the conflicts we suffer, and the extremism that is manifesting. We, as a faith, are fortunate that we have a government that was created parallel to our principles. The preamble of our Constitution states, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. The authority of the government is vested in the people." Unitarian minister Theodore Parker's sentiments on this authority would later be quoted by Abraham Lincoln, stating that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. So how does this nation hold the government accountable to its highest ideals as stated in the preamble? How does a faith hold itself accountable to its principles? Roger Nash Baldwin, one of the founders of the ACLU and executive director for its first 30 years, was a Unitarian. He received the values that informed his work with the ACLU as a child, growing up in a Unitarian household and congregation. His aunt, Ruth Standish Baldwin, was a founder of the National Urban League in 1910, a nonpartisan civil rights organization dedicated to ending racial discrimination. Her work influenced his. Baldwin embodied Unitarian values in his work in founding the ACLU, in pursuing to hold accountable the government to the ideals of the U.S. Constitution, and in so doing, the ACLU chose not to be partisan in holding the government accountable, choosing cases that some have found controversial. But in order to expand the circle of freedom, so it is indeed moving us towards a more perfect union. It means hearing voices we may not be familiar with or agree with or even love. It may mean that we, from time to time, recognize that groups that we detest may have points of view that need to be supported because these points expand liberty to include more people. The ACLU understood that and has supported certain stances for the sake of ensuring constitutional rights are indeed for all people of this country. For our fellowship, it may mean partnering with groups on issues that align with our values and our mission to create justice, even if we do not align on every issue or value. Reverend William Barber calls this fusion coalitions, standing alongside one another on agreed upon issues, even when we might not agree on every issue. The right for every voice to be heard, even when we disagree, is important to our freedom as a nation in the pursuit of happiness, in seeking liberty and justice for all. Ambassador Haley seems to have understood that in her comments regarding developing democracies on the continent of Africa. But did she understand it enough to hear those words as an admonishment to her own country? One of the issues that her administrative superiors failed to grasp, or perhaps grasp all too well, is that democracy only works when there is an informed populace. Calling the mainstream press fake news and conspiracy generators real newsmakers is a tactic to gaslight the public from having the knowledge necessary to make informed decisions. It also is a means to make it difficult to hold the administration accountable when the truth is obfuscated with contradicting lies and falsehoods. James Madison wrote in 1822, "A popular government without popular information or the means of acquiring it is but a prologue to a farce or a tragedy, or perhaps both. Knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power knowledge gives." The free press is vital to enable democracy to be held accountable to the people. Democracy Web, a project of the Albert Shanker Institute, writes, "The media must have broad protection against infringements of its rights and responsibilities under the Constitution and must have the freedom to be able to search out information when the public interest is concerned and be able to publish information relevant to the public's interest." We are hearing from our own government that the free press is the enemy of the people. The free press is being thwarted in their ability to empower the people to hold the government accountable to the people. And we have a populace that does not want to be informed with the truth. They are acting in ways that suggest they want to believe the narrative that conforms to their prejudices and biases. Our nation's founders developed to form a government that was meant to contain a series of checks and balances on each other. Congress was given the authority through the Constitution to hold other branches accountable for breaches of the public's trust through impeachment and expulsion. However, when congressional members place party over country, when accountability falters because loyalty to maintaining a party's political power is held supreme over the principles of the Constitution, we have seen over the last several decades across the political spectrum an increased demand of party loyalty over the eminence of a constitutional mandate to be accountable not to the party, but to the people of the United States. Once a person is elected to office, they no longer speak for a narrow constituency, but for the Constitution. Their oath is to uphold the Constitution, not the party edicts or the actions of the controlling party. Our nation has lost this sensibility of country over party, of e pluribus unum, out of many, one. Instead, our political parties have placed power over others to be the ultimate goal, not the goals of the U.S. Constitution to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. This is the role of government as established by the Constitution, but to hear our elected officials speak and act, one would think the role of government is to allow the wealthy to grab more wealth before the system crashes under the weight of their greed and runaway capitalism. U.S. federal courts, especially the Supreme Court, have the authority to judge the constitutionality of congressional laws and the executive branch's actions to faithfully carry out those laws. However, in recent years, there has been increased criticism over the Supreme Court and lower courts, suggesting that they are creating laws through judicial judgment. Many of the laws struck down as unconstitutional have been civil rights cases where the striking down has diminished white supremacy in all the forms that it takes. This is not the creation of new laws, but rather establishing the full authority of the Constitution, which seeks to form a more perfect union. The judgments made are holding the laws established accountable to the preamble of the U.S. Constitution. The Supreme Court was not created to be accountable to a specific political ideology. The judges are meant to be free from party allegiance. And yet, We have witnessed over the last 20 years or so increasing party alliances on the courts. To have accountability in democracy requires the people to be not only informed of the issues facing our community, but also to be involved in seeking solutions for those issues. Our faith calls us to be vanguards of society, to be questioning with a critical eye, to discern the veracity of information disseminated, especially today where propaganda and conspiracy theories flood our social media as truth, and our own elected officials are purveyors of falsehoods. We are called to weigh the issues through the lens of the oppressed and the marginalized, to assist in giving platforms for these communities to have their voices heard, especially when their voice might indict our own behaviors. As our Unitarian Universalist Association President Susan Frederick Gray has stated, this is no time for a casual faith. As a congregation, in our own use of democratic process, it is important that we ensure that we listen deeply to one another. We are encouraged to develop open channels of communication with one another so that if a member wants to know something, the information can be found easily. The final piece of holding our democracy accountable is by ensuring the people have accessibility to vote in elections, are informed on the proposed legislation and the issues. Our UUA is participating in a national voter registration drive to assist us in doing exactly that. In October, our UUA President, Susan Frederick Gray, will be speaking at the Sarasota congregation. It would be wonderful if we had a good turnout to hear her speak. Yes, I understand those who decry worship services that are focused on politics, especially when the focus of the conversation seems to demonize one party over another. May we open our hearts to hear with the issues that are underneath the party affiliation. May we listen deeply, affirm our empathy to the suffering and angst people are feeling, and seek to love one another as part of our goal of creating that world with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Blessed be.